Hey, welcome back to Everyday Economics. This is the podcast that helps you understand the economic world happening all around us. Everyday Economics is brought to you by the Center Square News Wire Service. I'm Krug. I'm publisher of the Center Square. And Orphe Divounguy is my partner on the show. He's a PhD economist. By the way, he is reporting live from Seattle. Today is Tuesday, January 13th. 2026, and in this episode we're talking about the Everyday Economics column that published on Monday. We apologize, we're a day behind. We had a couple of things happen in our schedules that prevented us from getting together yesterday, but there's plenty of stuff from last week that kind of is putting a shape on this week. And then, of course, CPI dropped today. We're going to actually just do an isolation on CPI in the second episode that we're going to record today. But let's hop into this. So, like the jobs report, as you wrote in your column, which again, that appears every Monday at the Center Square and moves across the Center Square Newswire every Monday. You say right out of the gate, it wasn't a quote unquote good report, but it wasn't a total collapse either. You noted the fact that payrolls are still growing modestly, again, your words, and that the unemployment rate hasn't spiked. Those are two independent factors, right? I mean, for those people who are coming in and trying to make sense of sort of how to look at all these things, these are separate pieces and they should be considered separately. But you wrote this: even so, the underlying message is clear. The labor market has lost momentum. That distinction matters with the Federal Reserve's next rate decision just 2 weeks away. And we got a few things to talk about with the Federal Reserve too. There's I'll tell you what, there are some weeks where we're looking at sort of what's going on. And certainly, during the government shutdown, we didn't have access to data. We were like seeking data points that made sense. We've got a lot of stuff going on right now, but let's get back into that. The jobs report, talk to me about it, and talk to me about the unemployment rate. Let's go through those two pieces first.
Yeah, I think the labor market was the concern, the main concern in 2025. We didn't add a lot of jobs last year. The job gains were concentrated mostly in the healthcare sector. And that's slowing, I think is concerning. We have now fewer job openings. There are people looking for work. It's the first time in a long time that's happened. Now, this past jobs report was actually good in the sense that I think we were expecting further deterioration, and we didn't get that. The unemployment rate actually ticked back down a little bit, which is good news. The employment to population ratio ticked up a little bit, which is good news. So yeah, we had a labor market that had cooled relative to last year, cooled a lot in 2025, but that maybe isn't cooling as much as people, or let me put it this way, isn't turning over, right? It's, it was deteriorating and then it stopped deteriorating. And I think that's the good news from this past jobs report. Now, most people will say, well, why isn't the Fed cutting, right? The Fed isn't cutting because inflation remains at roughly 2.7%, well above target. And as long as the labor market's okay, the Fed really has no reason to cut. The Fed's going to pause and wait and see what happens, especially given that, the latest inflation number were somewhat downwardly biased. The labor market's okay. And there are fiscal tailwinds coming in 2026. By fiscal tailwinds, we know that in that one big, beautiful bill, there is going to be a bunch of deficit spending, tax dollars going back into people's pockets, and that ought to support economic activity this year.
So, talk to me about the labor supply. There were three points I think that you kind of made at the top of your column, and you just spoke on the first one, which would be job growth and the fact that they're it's limited and it's uneven, and we won't even have to get into the revisions. So you kind of covered that. You wrote this specifically. There are roughly 7.5 million people looking for work, up to 583,000 over the course of 2025. At the same time, job openings have fallen to around 7.1 million. And you write, that crossover matters. When job openings exceed unemployed workers, firms compete aggressively for labor. When unemployed workers outnumber hirings, when unemployed workers outnumber openings, hiring slows and bargaining power shifts back to employers. I think anecdotally we're hearing that.
That's right. We are here, right? Whether it's employers asking workers to go back to the office, or wage growth is basically muted, right? So you're seeing wage growth cooling, right? Where real wages are falling, right? Wages adjusted for inflation. So employers are back in the driver's seat, and there aren't a lot of people getting a raise in 2026, right? And so that's I think concerning, because what it points to is an economy that's cooling. The consumer is going to start to pull back, and of course the economy cools. That is why I highlighted it. I highlight it in the column, and what we're talking about. It's important that the labor market does not deteriorate further.
The third item that you added in there was this, and I think that people that are out there that are looking for work, and employers who are watching and listening and thinking about sort of their strategy for putting their teams together for 2026, hires and separations would confirm a low hire, low fire environment, that we've reached some level of status.
The labor market it's essentially stuck, right? That's right. It's stuck in place. But what I think what's important to remember here is that this is very consistent with, in the past at least, what employers do before heading into a recession. We call it labor hoarding. They just kind of hold on to their most productive workers.
Yeah.
And then they start firing, right? They start firing less experienced workers little by little, and then all of a sudden you get a flood. And that's what we're trying to, at least that's what the Fed is going to try to prevent, right, going forward. Now, of course, no cuts yet. No cuts in January are in the cards for January, specifically because the labor market really hasn't rolled over yet. And they're still faced with the fact that inflation is still at 2.7%, and that there are fiscal tailwinds coming this year.
So we're going to talk, relative to your column. I mean, just directly from it. One of the things that you had mentioned was like what to look at this week. Consumer price index is out. We're going to talk about that in the next episode. The producer price index is also coming this week. You're going to look at on the housing side. You're going to take a look at new and existing sales. We've talked about this several times. I mean, 2025, pretty close to 2024 numbers. Not to suggest that it's soft, but it's certainly whatever we experienced between 2021.
No big uptick, right? That's
well,
right. No
2021 to 2023, we saw a lot of things happening. The activity was much greater until interest rates got in the way. And so we're going to come back and we're going to talk about those two things in the next episode. I want to thank you for your insights as always. Make sure you read Orphe's Everyday Economics column every Monday at the Center Square, and listen to what we have to say every weekend on the Center Square Radio Hour.